Yo, what's going on, guys? Crispy Flakes here. Welcome to Extra Crispy. For today's video, we got a video by Austin Sweat titled 8 NBA Stars Who Will Change Teams This Offseason. Guys, I'm hoping it's a crazy-ass offseason. I want some new storylines. I want superstars going to new teams, man. Like, that loyalty thing. It's good in some cases. But in basketball, man, I like the drama, you know what I'm saying? So, I will say, having like Ben Simmons and Zion and Kawhi Leonard will definitely help out next NBA season and everything. But, I don't know. I want a few switch-ups. I don't know what exactly, but let's see what Austin's got to say.
NBA free agency is coming up quick, and it's where players sign big deals and either stay with their current team or find a new home where they'll get paid more or earn a better opportunity on the court. But this free agency is unlike most because often it's one or two big players who may or may not change teams. Well, this year we have 7 to 8 stars who I think have a good chance to leave and really shake up their current teams, which would in turn shake up the rest of the NBA. So let's take a look. Now, first up is DeAndre Ayton, who's been a huge
Detroit Pistons
part for the Phoenix Suns and all of their success. He's been the centerpiece of the team that Chris Paul and Devin Booker play around. He opens up the floor for pick and rolls, plays great around the rim, and protects.
He's a great player.
Earlier this season, he was eligible to sign his first big contract, a max extension of 5 years and
$172 million. Okay, so when are you eligible for the Supermax contract? Because if this is like his 5th year or whatever, or 4th year going to the NBA or whatever, why can't you get the super? Because 172 don't sound like the worst. I can see maybe not wanting to sign up like a center for that much money in these days, but it seems like an okay contract.
$2 million. And apparently he was really expecting it because he was pretty
upset Rudy Gobert paid.
Want to give it to him, which means he'll now be a restricted free agent this offseason. So if another team comes along and offers him a similar deal to that, he's gonna leave the Phoenix Suns, which I think is gonna happen. But the Suns are doing the right thing here. Sure, DeAndre's young and averages 18 and 10, but there's no way I'd give him a max contract because for one, they play pretty well with him still off the floor.
That's
I think
true.
they can find a replacement for much cheaper.
I would not do it if I was
the
the Suns.
max deal, think of all the guys that could get instead that would come line up to play with Chris Paul and Devin Booker.
Get you a Jakob Poeltl, you'll be good.
Team out there that wants to take a bet on the 23-year-old while they got nothing else going on. And there's a lot of teams that could use the big man coming up. The Hornets, Hawks, and Blazers should be desperate.
Hornets, Hawks, and Blazers. Hornets I like a lot. Hawks, I still look at Kongu. I think that's like their piece there. They can get somebody else. Portland Trail Blazers trying to keep Damian Lillard happy, but also at the same time you can go out and get a guy that can be part of the rebuild. I like that one too.
Sign him this offseason. The Hornets have needed a center for years, and he would fit perfectly alongside guys like Miles Bridges.
Yeah, I'd love to see that, to be honest.
The Hawks would have to sign and trade Clint Capella and others, but their current roster needs work anyways, and he would be a huge upgrade from Clint. This isn't a must for the Hawks, but I could see it happen. It is a must for the Portland Trail Blazers, though. They have nothing going on with their team anymore. They need to finally replace Yusuf Nurkic and give Damian a real big man. Plus, Ayton fits in well with how young the rest of the roster is now. James Harden has a player option on his deal, so it's up to him on if he'll become a free agent.
I don't know where Harden's gonna go.
I would just feel so bad
Houston.
for Joel Embiid if he left him without another star. But after seeing these past playoffs, I probably wouldn't feel too bad because they wouldn't be.
Yeah, if I was the 76ers, if James Harden ends up leaving, I am going to try to get whatever I can for Tobias Harris. I don't know how you can do that exactly, but there's probably some team out there giving some draft picks and stuff like that. And I would just retool the entire roster around Joel Embiid. I think a ton of like guards and really good shooters want to play with a guy like that, Things can open up
too much. I don't know what it is. I would have thought James would love to play in Philly. It's where he wanted to go instead of Brooklyn, and for him to play with Joel, they were supposed to be an all-time great duo.
I just don't think Harden's motivated anymore.
He doesn't want to be there, so even though he has a $47 million player option for next season, if he can convince another team that he still deserves a max deal, even though he's past his prime, then I think he'd easily sign that instead. He'd be turning down a lot of money now to make even more.
Yeah, I don't think
because if he takes that $47 million
too
and
motivated.
plays terrible next year, then his hopes of a max are gone. And the only team that really makes sense to me on the court is the Miami Heat. Some people may say the Dallas Mavericks, but Luka can't play off the ball, so that wouldn't happen. But with the Heat, Jimmy Butler needs another star.
I think Luka could potentially play off ball, just
which he always does. He put up 28 a game this year and didn't get much help from anyone else. Kyle Lowry averaged 7 a game. Tyler Hero put up 12 a game, and Bam Adebayo came in with 14 a night. It would be messy, but I think they can make enough moves this offseason to land Harden. Just as long as they can keep the core of this team together, it could work. Because to have the defensive-minded Miami Heat to go along with James would make them perfect compliments for each other, and I think it would give them just enough scoring to win a championship. Going for Mitchell. But again, all those other dudes just gotta step up. Now, other people were saying James Harden should go to the Knicks or the Clippers, but I don't see those working. The Knicks,
I think the Knicks could be fun. I don't think it would be successful, but it would be fun, I think. I'd be a little intrigued with that.
Why? And the Clippers, him, PG, and Kawhi Leonard just doesn't seem right. But speaking of Miami Heat players, Victor Oladipo is now an unrestricted free agent, and he's in a tough situation. After he turned down huge money from the Pacers and had to sign a one-year deal to prove himself in Miami, he really didn't. He had okay moments this postseason, but not good enough to convince anyone to give him max contract type of money like he got offered from Indiana. And at 29 years old, I don't see him signing a small money long-term contract. So I think he's gonna go out, sign a minimum deal, and try one more year to try and prove himself. And he's got a couple options if that's the case. He could stay with the Miami Heat because he's already now in their system.
Yeah, I like him as a bench player, to be honest.
When he's on a new team, and they could offer him a small, maybe $5 to $10 million deal.
Hero.
So could the Dallas Mavericks. A guy like Victor, especially at 100%, may be the best backcourt option out there for Luka. If he ever got back to normal, he's a defensive-minded all-star level player that can score pretty well. And even the Mavericks would be a good fit for him to sign a small one-year deal because they just made the Western Conference Finals, so he'll be able to get a lot of attention if he played for them next season. The other option, of course, is the Lakers. If he wants a high-profile team to prove himself on, LA is the place to go because obviously.
See, if I remember correctly, I don't think Victor Oladipo was shooting all that great. That's my thing about him is like, I like him as like a guy that can maybe run the offense as like a six man or everything, but like have him starting next to like Russell Westbrook and like LeBron and Anthony Davis, not like the greatest floor spacing right there.
Have all the attention,
but he would be a cheap option, which is what they need.
All the help they can get right now. Speaking of high profile, Kyrie Irving may be the highest profile player during this year's free agency, seeing that he's a restricted free agent this year. And even though there are a couple playoff contenders like the Clippers that could still use a point guard like Kyrie, they shouldn't be willing and shouldn't be desperate enough to take on the risk of adding him to their roster. We still don't know what we're going to get from him on a nightly basis, and if we're even going to get him at all. There's two teams.
I think the reason maybe I would say the Clippers, though, is because they already have a lot of risk with that roster, you know, with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George both having, like, health issues. So, I mean, if you can toss, like, another person into that equation, you still keep Reggie Jackson on the team, it's like you up your chances of having at least two of those three guys available, I think. I don't know if that's how probability works. Probability not. Hate myself.
Teams, though, that are so desperate for point guards that should be willing to sign him to a long-term deal, and that's the Washington Wizards and the New York
Wizards.
Now, for the Wizards, Kyrie would be a great pairing for Bradley Beal, and we know he could play next to him because skill-wise on the court, Irving's still a top
That'd be fun to watch.
Top 3-point
the new Gilbert Arenas.
It's just everything else that always gets in the way. And I think if they just straight up signed him and gave him a deal bigger than the Nets would, then they'd have a pretty good roster. Don't get me wrong, I still don't think this would be a championship squad.
They could get Kyrie Irving, and then Kevin Durant could request a trade to Washington because I think he's from the DC area. And, all of a sudden, y'all got a ballin'-ass team.
The playoffs, wow. They do solid there. But with that said, the combo of Kyrie and Kristaps is one of the most
Kristaps
two players you get. But then again, the Nets currently have Irving and Ben Simmons on the same team, so even that would be an upgrade. The New York Knicks have got to be desperate enough at this point after missing out on every single good free agent ever. So they could give Kyrie a big deal too. The Knicks didn't even.
Hey, they got Emmanuel quickly. They're good.
It was sad, but I think Kyrie might be exactly what they need to turn things around. The developing defense of RJ Barrett combined with a guy like Mitchell Robinson, along with the star power of RJ and Julius Randle and a supporting cast like they have, maybe everything they need to take them to the next level. Zach LaVine's free agency decision is going to be a scary one for the Chicago Bulls because Zach's an unrestricted free agent this year and said that he wants to enjoy free agency before making a decision. I mean, even though they didn't have Lonzo, the Bulls were out in the first round.
Zach LaVine is going to end up on the... Man, I can see... It's like... The Bulls are like ready to contend, in my opinion, if they can stay healthy. So the fact that he's leaving, that means that you would think he would go to another situation where at least he has a chance to win a ring. Like, I don't see him going to, like, I don't know, like Portland or like San Antonio, because I don't think those teams are like contending next season. I could see him trying to be that difference maker for the Lakers, though. I could see him wanting to do something like that maybe. But even with that, it's like, you know, where's that money coming from? I think he goes back to Chicago. I think he's going to enjoy the process. You know, I think he's going to get a little wine down 69 action for some of the different NBA teams up in there. But I think ultimately speaking, not the 69 part so much. Then he will ultimately end up on the Chicago Bulls. But I think he's going to enjoy the process.
So
he's going to make the team sweat a little.
But losing LaVine isn't it. And I hope Chicago can keep him. I mean, they just finally got good again. But there's going to be so many teams after a scorer like him that's so good on offense and can do it all. Now, I've seen people talking about
he don't get a max.
Hornets, but they only need a center, so he shouldn't go there. Again, though, we're revisiting three teams we just talked about because, well, they're in the best position to sign free agents. The Hawks, Mavs, and the Blazers. If the Atlanta Hawks can make
I like the Dallas fitting a lot.
Zach LaVine, they should seriously consider it because himself and Trae Young in the backcourt would be the real deal. It's not the best scenario because they're lacking in defense, assets, but it would still be an upgrade from what they have now. But I think LaVine and Luka would fit perfectly together. LaVine proved this season that he could be a valuable second option to DeMar DeRozan, so he could do maybe even better next to Luka. And you may even get a similar effect to how CP3 and Devin Booker work out, since LaVine and Booker's games are pretty similar. Then of course, if he went to the Portland Trailblazers, he'd obviously be a big upgrade from CJ McCollum, who they had last year. But
would it be a big upgrade though? I mean, he would be an upgrade. I'll give him that, but I don't think that's enough. That's enough of like a needle mover. And the fact that they already got like Anfernee Simons, who I think should be starting, I'd much rather see the Portland Trailblazers just try something else out. But just getting like another like high scoring guard next to Damian Lillard, it's like we've seen that already. It's like it was not successful.
But I don't think it'd make a huge difference because this team would still need to do so much if they wanted to become a real playoff threat, so it might not be that convincing for him to go there. Honestly, I have no idea what Zach's gonna do, but these are all probably my bet for what I think is most likely. And before we get to our last player, a couple of quick honorable mentions. Colin Sexton and Malik Monk are both gonna be leaving their respective teams this offseason. I don't know where they'll end up, but for Sexton, it's clear as time on the Cavs is up. He's a restricted free agent, and his team's chosen Darius Garland as their starting point guard, and they already have plenty of backups to choose from, so it only makes sense from their perspective that they let Colin walk and use his money to try and sign someone else at a different position instead. And for Malik Monk, he was a solid young scorer for Charlotte and set out to prove himself this year to earn a bigger contract with the Lakers, wasn't he? Honestly, he did put on a good performance for the Lakers, but I don't think he really separated himself too much from where he was at last year. But given that he hasn't gotten a big payday yet, expect him to look for one once free agency opens up, being that he's an unrestricted free agent. Then of course there's Bradley Beal, and don't get me wrong, he's without a doubt gonna stay with the Wizards and sign the 5-year, $245 million extension, making it the biggest contract in NBA history. But I really think he's gonna do that than just request a trade and leave after this upcoming season. Unless the Wizards did something huge, like signing Kyrie Irving, like I mentioned earlier.
But also, like, Bradley Beal is gonna be, after next season, gonna be like 30-31, bit of an injury history. Man, I don't know about trading for a $245 million contract and a guy at that age, but I don't know.
I don't think Bradley's wanted to be in Washington for years. He was just staying there and waiting for the big money. So he may not be leaving this offseason, but he's a free agent. It's his job, it's his career. And I definitely still think he's going to be gone in the future, so I had to include him. Now, honestly, if I'm the Washington Wizards, I don't give him that money. Obviously, they haven't been able to build around him, so what makes them think that they're going to be able to now? And sure, their roster is looking much nicer than it has in years past, but
I think they are going to give him the money for the one point of just that if they don't give him the money, who are they going to give it to? And I think, you know, their scenario is they either get to have Bradley Beal for the next 4 or 5 seasons, or they will trade him for something. Like some team will take on his contract to get him on the team. Like, it would happen. So I think that's probably the way you look at it. But that's what we got for this video. Very interesting breakdown by Austin. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Peace out, my friends.